Hey folks, Krishna here. This is going to be my thoughts on using the Mac Mini for about a week now. So I've got an M4 Mac Mini with 24 gigs of RAM, 512 gigs of solid state storage. I am not going to be running benchmarks or anything like that. I'm sure if you're interested in those type of things, you can find them on YouTube. But I want to give my perspective on using the Mac Mini now as a digital art device. I have the Mac Mini currently connected to a Cintiq that's a 27-inch QHD model. I have a Dell display that's also 27 inches, and I have a small 10-inch display that's configured to a small compact Mac that I've repurposed as with a modern display. So it runs those three displays like a champ, and it's been a very responsive, very fast machine. And I'm moving up from an i7 Mac Mini 2018 model that had 32 gigs of RAM, 256 gigs of storage. So my initial concern with stepping down in terms of RAM has been really a non-issue because the machine is incredibly responsive and fast, and I don't really miss the extra headroom of 32 gigs of RAM. So I primarily use this machine for Photoshop and Premiere, and I have edited a video using this Mac Mini. I've also created a few pieces of art using my Mac Mini, and I've had no issues whatsoever. The machine is very, very smooth and easy to work with, and it's incredibly responsive. Now, the one issue I did run into, which may be a concern for some folks, is if you're having third-party peripherals. So I have a Logitech MX Master 3S mouse. I also have a NuFi keyboard. And when I tried to plug these devices in using either USB-C cables or a USB-A to USB-C cable or something like that, initially the Mac Mini on first boot up did not recognize those devices. I tried switching ports, tried doing all sorts of different things, nothing worked. So basically the Mac was just kind of at the setup screen waiting for me to do something. What I ended up having to do was track down an old Apple keyboard and an old wired Apple mouse. I had those laying around in my garage, brought those in, plugged them in, and I was then able to configure the Mac and get things working. So that was the only big issue that I ran into in my setup. The other thing that you want to be aware of here is that the Mac Mini's storage is somewhat limiting, and Apple charges an exorbitant amount of money for extra storage. I didn't want 256 gigs of storage because that was a little bit too tiny. I was already starting to really feel that space threshold hit with the old Mac Mini that I had. So I doubled the storage, and I have most of my data, if not all of it, located on external drives. So I have a Thunderbolt 4 drive array. Let's talk about using the Mac Mini for creating digital art using Photoshop. So typically I work on canvas sizes that are roughly 11 by 17 inches. Sometimes it's a little bit smaller. If I'm just creating something specifically for the screen like digital art, typically in that case, it's like a 5100 pixel by 3300 pixel, 600 pixels per inch type of situation. And I have anywhere between say 50 to 250 layers. And these layers will include line art, colors, highlights, shading, sometimes, very rarely, filters, but I do use halftone patterns in my work. And I also use textures. And zooming in and zooming out with 175 layers was like butter, absolutely smooth. The brush was incredibly responsive, no lag whatsoever. So overall, it's very, very fast. Now, I also have a dedicated scratch disk in Photoshop, and the scratch disk basically, if your Mac happens to need more RAM than what is currently available, it will utilize your Mac's storage as virtual RAM. And instead of actually impacting the Mac Mini's internal storage, I have a dedicated Thunderbolt 4 NVMe drive that is 1 terabyte in size, and I've partitioned it. But essentially one of those partitions is the scratch disk, and I use that for both Premiere and Photoshop. Now, speaking of Premiere, when it comes to video editing and bringing in footage, I typically work in 4K footage. either from a screen capture or screen recording situation, or bringing footage in from my iPhone and bringing those bits of content in and making edits and exporting, no issues whatsoever. For a 5-minute video, like the one that I made previously to this one, it took about 5 minutes to export. So basically it's like a 1-to-1. If you have 5 minutes of footage without too many crazy layers or too many other weird effects and stuff like that, if you're just doing straight up video editing with no color correction or anything else like that, like I do, it's fine. On my old i7 Mac Mini, if I were to export out footage just using the integrated graphics of the i7, a 5-minute video would take me anywhere between 20 to 30 minutes using Premiere. So overall, I'm very impressed with the M4's performance, especially coming from the Intel processor. So who's the Mac Mini for? Well, if you're a digital artist or a video editor that wants an affordable setup, I think it's an excellent choice. I think it's good for students and professionals. I think 16 gigs is probably more than good enough. I'm pretty sure that baseline Mac Mini is gonna be punching above its pay grade. But I like to future-proof my machines, as I mentioned before, because I typically keep machines for a very long period of time. And then I just try to wring as much performance out of them before I move on to a new machine. I would recommend the 24 gig upgrade, and I would definitely recommend moving the storage to at least 512. Now, all of my data sits on external drives, and I typically have those connected via Thunderbolt as well. So I really do appreciate the number of ports that the Mac Mini offers. I'm not disappointed that Apple removed the USB-A ports, but I also have USB-A to USB-C dongles on hand, so it wasn't really too much of a deal breaker for me. But that is something to keep in mind if you're coming in from another system. You do want to make sure that you have what you need so you can get up to speed right away. So I hope you found this video to be helpful. If you do, please consider giving it a like, subscribe. Every week I'll have new digital art tutorials focusing on Photoshop workflows. Let me know in the comments if you're considering the Mac Mini M4, or if you have any questions about its performance. See you in the next video.